Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. We have a long title book today and a high-ranking gentleman to present it. Here goes the title, The Bond. Now that's short, but that doesn't mean diddly. The Bond, our kinship with animals, our call to defend them. The author is Wayne Pacelle. Pacelle. Can't read my own.
Either one is Italian.
As long as it's Italian. Wayne Pacelle. He is the president and chief executive officer of the Humane Society of the United States, and his privileged publishers, William Morrow. This is an interesting book for William Morrow. In the sense that the ones that I get from William Morrow are usually mysteries, adventures, fiction. I'm very pleased to see this.
Me too. I was really, really happy that Morrow and HarperCollins took this on, and anything like this is a little bit out of the box to begin with.
It sure is.
But it's a different animal protection book. It's a different animal book. I don't think there's anything quite like it in the field.
I agree. The scope, just in scope alone, and then the angle that you come at things and the emphasis that you provide. One of the things you're out to prove is that this ain't your grandma's Humane Society. And by golly, it ain't.
No, it's amazing. This local brand is so strong for Humane Society. It's so associated with dogs and cats and shelters and homeless animals. And that is part of our birthright at the Humane Society of the United States. But from the very beginning, it was always broader than that. When the organization was founded in 1954, it was created by individuals placed in Washington, D.C. to look at national issues, not just to respond to the exigent circumstances of homeless animals in a particular community, but to look at the problem on the front end, to address the big macro-level problems that animals face, whether it was inhumane slaughter or whether it was dogfighting on a national scale or the funneling of dogs into research facilities. It was always broader, and it's changed in these last 57 or 58 years very dramatically, and now we touch on everything under the sun in terms of human-animal interactions.
Yeah, well, as you say in the book, today HSUS is not your grandmother's Humane Society, helping only stray dogs and cats while other forms of neglect and cruelty go unanswered. In fact, this image has never done the group justice. From its founding in the 1950, I thought it was older than that, our organization has never limited its everyday work and moral concern to companion animals. We have major programs to protect pets, but our concern reaches to all animals, and I have sought as CEO to assemble the whole range of assets that any modern animal advocacy group needs. And then you go through the laundry list, starting with lawyers and lobbyists that don't come cheap.
No, and also, it's designed, this organization, to take on factory farming, to take on puppy mills, to take on the killing of animals for fur, including the horrific killing of harp and hooded seals in Canada right now, the biggest mammalian slaughter in the world, marine mammal slaughter in the world. And you name it, dogfighting, cockfighting, the exotic animal trade, lots of subjects, which keeps us busy every single day because, unfortunately, there's that much cruelty and indifference to animals in the world.
What makes the book very interesting to me is that agenda, at least the way you present it, is viable because of the title of the book, The Bond between humankind and animal. And that's where it all starts. Without a recognition of that, then we'll take care of cats and dogs and puppy tails, and that's it.
It gives us a natural inclination to be empathetic to other creatures. And in the first third of the book, I try to explain why this bond exists. I think there's actually some biochemistry to it. There's the history of human interactions with animals that has kind of programmed us to be interested in animals. I think we're just a social being in general. We like to interact with other people. We need it. If you're a prisoner in solitary confinement, you go mad because we need and crave interactions with others. And animals fulfill an amazing social role for us, and we are fascinated by them. And all you need to do is look at our current American behavior. You can look at behavior all around the world. But in the United States, 171 million dogs and cats in our homes, 2/3 of American households. 70 million of us are wildlife watchers, whether they're watching birds or whether they're watching whales. We have Animal Planet on television. I mean, we are interested in animals. So this is not some, newfound concern. It's not a social invention of the 21st century. It's been with us through the entire arc of human history.
But again, your approach is extremely honest, because you look deeper and you talk about the contradiction, that while we have this bond, we don't always fulfill what would be seen as the responsibilities of it?
Absolutely. I mean, I always talk about human responsibility rather than animal rights. It's really more about us than it is about them. Of course, there are basics that we've got to understand about animals, such as they feel, they think, they suffer. And we are an altruistic species. We have standards of conduct that govern relations between one another. We're supposed to be good to our family members, our community, our nation. We should be good to animals, too.
Okay, though we shower love, care, and food on our pets, the bond contends that in some ways we mismeasure our animals. Mismeasure, that's a new term, so stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
And we are joined today by Wayne Pacelle. Thought I'd say it first and get it right. The President and Chief Executive Officer of the Humane Society of the United States. And he's written a very comprehensive book about animals, their relationship to us, and what's going on with animals today. The title is The Bond, Our Kinship with Animals, Our Call to Defend Them. Our call to defend them. Very, very important. And a nice gentleman by the name of John Mackey. He runs a food company, called Best Foods, fairly successful. You've all heard of it.
Whole Foods, right?
Whole Foods,
right.
Yes. And a little expensive, but good. The Bond is the best overall book on animals I have ever read. Brilliant and moving, Wayne Pacelle's book communicates something profoundly important to its readers. It calls us to enter into a deeper and more caring relationship with animals. That's quite a call. It's a beautiful call, and almost every one of us has lived it with a cat or a dog, and it really is. It has a universal basis in our human makeup. The very best books change the way we see the world and the way we see ourselves. The Bond is that kind of book. I agree.
Thank you. I thought he was a little miserly with the quote. I think he could have lavished a little more praise on it myself.
Well, why the hell don't we? Isn't he local? Oh, call him up. Get him in here and defend himself.
It's a very generous quote, and I'm glad that you associate yourself with it. Thank you. I'm flattered.
Yeah, good guy. Good guy. Now, one of the people who comes up in your book is a football player, pretty good one, but who's had a major role recently in this country's understanding of animals. The football player Michael Vick. What did you do? You visited him?
I did visit him, and it was a visit that I never expected to make because I had vilified the man. The man was the personification of cruelty to me. We, more than any other organization, have invested so much in combating dogfighting and cockfighting. In fact, I helped to write the federal law under which Michael Vick was prosecuted. We demanded...
Hey, Michael, friends coming to see you.
Yes, exactly. We demanded his prosecution. We urged the NFL to dump him, Nike to dump him. All of that happened. But oddly enough, near the end of his prison term, when he was at Leavenworth Penitentiary, one of the legendary federal penitentiaries, he reached out to me and said he wanted to help with our anti-dogfighting campaign. My initial instinct was absolutely not, never, no way, will not talk to this guy. He is evil. And then I started to have this nagging feeling. I started to think, well, what are we really about at the Humane Society of the United States? Are we about endlessly flogging someone? Are we about keeping them in the same place? Or are we about them moving forward? And then I also thought, what's the biggest problem with dogfighting? And the biggest problem is that in urban communities, young men and boys, younger than Michael Vick and Michael Vick's age, are the ones who are involved in dogfighting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he could offer a cautionary tale to young men and kids in the cities, tell them about his fall and tell them how horrible it is at its core as an activity, dogfighting. And I spent hours with him trying to figure out what was in his heart, but then I decided really the most important thing for me to do is measure his behavior. He said that he would speak to kids in cities twice a month, and I said, I need 2 to 3 years for me to do it, and if you do then and fulfill it, then maybe we'll work with you. He said, I want to do it for the rest of my life. I'm very committed to this. And he's been fulfilling that duty. We've spoken to more than 10,000 kids together.
You're kidding.
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
And it's a conversation about animals that we're not having in this country in terms of the Humane Society talking to these kids in cities. You know, some of the poorest cities in the country, kids who are leading a tough life and facing a lot of temptation on the streets, a lot of pressure on the streets. And to inoculate them to this scourge of dogfighting, to me, has been such an important thing. And it's actually work I'm very proud of. And I recount my very long journey that I've traveled with Michael Vick, from someone who really loathed him to someone who now has chosen to work with him.
Well, you both can change. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about the book, in my opinion, is that at certain points you kind of take a step back and take a breath and disclose philosophy of where you are. And I'd like you to share one of those moments right now.
Well, this is from the end of the second chapter, called The Mismeasure.
Yeah.
The Mismeasure of Animals. And that chapter started because of Stephen Jay Gould's work, The Mismeasure of Man, and how people used intelligence measurement as a way to suppress or put down certain races. And I think we've done that with animals for a long time.
We sure have.
So here's the extended quote or excerpt. For a long time in our dealings with animals, we have conducted ourselves like beings from another world, unfeeling, all-powerful, and strangely disconnected from the realities of animal consciousness and emotion. But it shouldn't be such a stretch to recognize how much we have in common with creatures made of the same flesh and blood, or to imagine ourselves in their place, helpless, vulnerable, and afraid. It's been slow to come to us, since in some manner we seem to have been programmed to see the world a certain way. As we gain greater understanding about animals, we cannot help but begin to develop a closer bond with them and to open our hearts to their plight. Refusing to believe that animals have intelligence or even conscious life is not only counterintuitive, but also a little too convenient. Leaders of animal use industries have hired their own veterinarians and other scientists to deny the emotional intelligence of animals, or to say the industry's treatment of other creatures is just fine, much like the biological determinists of another time who twisted reality to prove that certain races were inferior. When pseudoscientists tell us that animals are not conscious or aware, and are instead driven by mechanical, unfeeling instinct, the moral path has been cleared for economic interests to do as they please. Mechanical and unfeeling, moreover, better describe humanity in action when we permit the boundless cruelties that modern industries inflict. In the treatment of animals, there's a vast gap between what we know and what we allow, what objective science affirms and what the law permits. And much of the modern animal welfare movement is working to close that gap, to bring consistency into the moral equation. We know too much, and what might have been excused in other times can no longer stand up to reason. We know that pigs and other animals are intelligent, social creatures, and with that understanding comes moral responsibility. It is wrong to condemn them to the dark, wretched existence of the factory farm. In the same way, we know better than to treat primates as if they are the raw and disposable material for experimentation, or to drown dolphins by the thousands as if they were just acceptable bycatch for fishing fleets, or to consider companion animals as expendable surplus when there are no companions to claim them.
We're going to stop now, and we'll come back, and in our last segment, we'll look at what we think is probably the greatest amount of damage from industrial farming. I think it occurs in raising turkeys. We'll be back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Yes, this is Conversations on the Coast, and today we're talking about a very important book. It's called The Bond, Our Kinship with Animals, Our Call to Defend Them. We're talking with Wayne Pacelle. He is the president and the CEO of the Humane Society of the United States, and he's the most interesting, affable, likable CEO I've ever talked to. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And other people like you, too. I just don't want, not just me. Jeffrey Mason, author of When Elephants Weep. The Bond is a monumental achievement, majestic in sweep and beautifully written. There is hardly any topic about animals that Wayne Pacelle has not touched, and along the way illuminated. He seems to have been everywhere, seen everything to do with animals. Yeah, you could do elephants and a lot of stuff. Observing with deep compassion, matched by an incisive intelligence, there is so much information in his book that ever we read it, no matter how well-versed, we'll learn something. I can't think of any other book that is so valuable. It is truly wonderful. And you paid him, I don't know how much for that, but that's terrific.
Well, that was very generous quote. And we just made, in the first week, we made the New York Times bestseller list.
No kidding.
Yes, number 11.
We'll see it this week in our papers, or the following week?
Your week, when yours, this is the day it comes out in the New York Times book review.
How about that? Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Now, you spend an awful lot of time in the book in what we can, in general, I think, called industrial farming, and how it affects various species and stuff. And the one I'd like you to talk about briefly is how it affects turkeys, gobble, gobble.
Well, as a general matter, this book treats the human relationship to animals, all animals, and that includes looking at those we raise for food. And there's been an incredible transformation in agriculture over the last half century. Animals were moved from outdoor settings where they had sunlight on their backs and soil beneath their feet, where they had a decent life before they went to slaughter. They've been moved into these large windowless buildings, and we've often re-engineered the animals.
The other thing that you mentioned about them is what good flyers they were.
Well, turkeys in particular, yes.
Yeah.
Turkeys, if you're a hunter and you're pursuing turkeys, you dress in full camouflage, face paint, because the birds are so alert, and they're fast-flying, they run very fast. The modern turkey used in industrial food animal production is grossly overweight with muscle and fat, because certain commercially valuable parts have been exaggerated to make them more valuable.
To the extent you write, I believe, that they fall over?
They fall over. They die of heart attacks at a few weeks of age. They have chronic leg problems that make them unable to stand. Now, these are the things that we associate in the human community with old age and with disease. These are newborns. These are animals that are just a few weeks old that have these afflictions, which shows that we're essentially rearing fundamentally unhealthy animals from a genetic and hereditary standpoint. And then we compound that injury by cramming them together in these large windowless buildings, and then we don't even protect them under the Humane Slaughter Act. The birds are exempt under the Federal Humane Methods of Slaughter Act because the poultry industry has carved out an exemption and blocks legislation to see that the animals are humanely slaughtered.
Now, you and the Humane Society are going to continue to work like hell to make things better and different. And at the end of the book, I think you give us 50 ways?
50 ways to help animals at the end of the book, because without action, this talk and this narrative doesn't have great value. We've got to act on our beliefs. We've got to act on these principles. And with moral problems all around us, because the use of animals is intertwined in our culture, that means there are moral opportunities all around us. We have opportunities to do the right thing for animals every single day. It's up to us as individuals. Don't look to someone else. Don't just look to the government. Don't just look to corporations. Look to yourself, and also look to those other places.
What are some of the things that we can do?
Well, I think we've got to be thinking about our food choices. I mean, 10 billion animals, most of them raised on factory farms, produced every year in the United States for food. I mean, at the very least, Prop 2 in California, which we did 2 years ago, stopped the extreme confinement of laying hens, veal calves, and breeding sows in cages and crates barely larger than their bodies. The animals were immobilized. Animals built to move should be allowed to move. This is wrong. And the voters of the state affirmed that ballot measure. In fact, it got more votes than any initiative in California history.
And then, in typical fashion in this country, people called politicians and representatives have found or are trying to find a way around.
Yes, well,
changes.
The industry is making a clamor and is suing, and but the 50 ways includes buying products not tested on animals. If you're getting a dog or a cat, go to a shelter or a rescue group rather than to a pet store where the animal may have come from a puppy mill. Lots of practical suggestions, and of course, I want people to get involved with the Humane Society of the United States because it's through that collective action where we can exert pressure on corporations, the Congress, the state legislature in Sacramento. We can educate the public. It's the Humane Society that's driving a lot of this change.
Now, the Humane Society undoubtedly has a website.
Yes, it's humanesociety.org.
And if someone went there, there'd probably be instructions on how to join or donate.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, buy the book called The Bond, Our Kinship with Animals, Our Call to Defend Them. The author is Wayne Pacelle. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.